The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to this webinar. Thank you for joining. My name is Trojil Birov and I'm from Empirica, a company in Germany, which is one of the partners in the project HSMonitor, Health Status Monitor, or shortly HSMonitor. And today, together with other partners from the consortium, we would like to present to you what HSMonitor is. This is a series of events. The core of the project is about 5 healthcare providers across Europe who would like to finally solve the challenge of providing ICT-enabled monitoring to improve the health status and optimize hypertension care. And this event is dedicated to our colleagues at Jämtland, Region Jämtland, who are one of these healthcare providers. They're working together with, again, the 4 other healthcare providers in a joint effort to solve this challenge. But we're focusing today on their needs and the project's needs as a whole. So this webinar is scheduled to be for 2 hours, but we can also extend it depending on your questions. We want to answer all of your questions, collect and discuss all of the ideas you have that will help us to make this project a success. And you already see on the screen a few other faces. We'll make a rounded introduction in a few seconds. But first, if you go to the next slide, Miriam, I just wanted to tell you why we're doing this. Obviously, it's a big project. It's actually a Horizon 2020 funded project that we are looking at. And the European Commission is providing money to support this activity. What we want to do, what we aim to do today is to introduce you to what HSMonitor is about and what we want to procure through the project. We want to explain a bit the mechanism behind that, because it's if you're familiar with Horizon projects, it's not a very typical instrument like the others you might know. So we want to explain what the pre-commercial procurement mechanism is and how to participate if you want to submit a possible solution to address this challenge. We want to consult with you because we imagine that you represent potential suppliers. That's what we call them. These are research organizations, industry organizations that are able to actually provide the seeked solution. And the third area we want to focus on is to facilitate and help you establish partnerships, because this is a big project. We mentioned 5 different healthcare providers across Europe. So there's languages that you need to cover. There's locations that you need to think about when we go to the next stages and pilot the actual solutions. So this complex project probably requires the forming of consortia. And that is why we wanted to talk to you about this. Okay, so you see a few faces already. I'll introduce myself first because I'm at the bottom left. Again, my name is Trojil Birov from Empirica. And if we go from top left to right, I would like the Swedish colleagues just to introduce themselves as well first.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Göran Larsson, and I'm the Director of R&D at Region Jämtland Härjedalen.
Welcome, everyone. I'm the manager of the project office that is under the R&D department in the region, and we are working on the regional development, and we do so mainly through Horizon 2020 projects. Several of those. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Mikael Lilja. I'm a family physician by training, now working mostly at the R&D department, but partly also as a university teacher.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning. I'm Miriam Martin. I'm the head of project management at TIC Biomed. We are a cluster based on the southeast of Spain. And our main task in this project is just to help to bridge the gap in between healthcare organizations and all the business sector.
Okay, Ozan Beyhan is not with us today, but maybe he will be able to join. I'm not sure. Okay, we can move on.
I'm moving.
Okay, so just a few housekeeping rules. We plan to do this in a series of small presentations to introduce you to the project itself and go through this agenda that you see here. But you are on mute. That's the mode of the webinar. Please wait. If you have any questions, please wait a bit until maybe the end after we go through all presentations, because we might answer some of your questions. But if you would like to pose a question in the question and answer section, you see that is the fifth session, then please you can use two different options. One is to write directly in the question chat box, and the other one is to use this webinar functionality called raise a hand. If you raise a hand during the question and answer session, we'll go through your questions live, so your audio will be enabled and you'll be able to pose your questions. Again, we'll have enough time for all of your questions, but we wanted to first go through different aspects of our project to see whether this is something that you think you can apply to and go from there. So we have a welcome and introduction session. We'll then move on to describing a bit more the aim and the scope of the procurement. We'll discuss a bit the different phases of the pre-commercial procurement and the tender process, and what are the next steps for us in the project and maybe for you if you're interested to participate. Okay, so the first session in brief will be presented by Göran Larsson from Sweden.
Okay, thank you. Should we have the next slide, please? So if one look at hypertension in general, it's also referred as the silent killer, meaning that patients with hypertension show no or weak or very mild or a few symptoms showing that they have hypertension. That means that many of us has hypertension without knowing it. So basically, it contributing to a low awareness of the disease. It is the major risk factor of many cardiovascular events, such as, for example, coronary artery disease, stroke, heart failure, atrial fibrillation, chronic kidney disease, amongst other diseases. If one look at hypertension in general, roughly 95% of all hypertension cases are categorized as essential hypertensions, meaning that it's a form of high blood pressure without a known cause. And actually the prevalence of it increases with increasing age. Essential hypertension is linked to a range of lifestyle factors. And for example, smoking, low physical activity, food and salt intake, alcohol, etc. But essential hypertension can also be linked to a range of genetic factors. And so if there is a higher prevalence of hypertension if you already have it in your family. The next slide. So if one look at hypertension, one say that 1 of 5 in our population have high blood pressure. And high blood pressure is related to roughly 50% of death from heart disease and stroke. So it is a severe condition, but few of us know that we actually have hypertension. It is the most prevalent cardiovascular disorder, affecting roughly 20 to 50% of all cardiovascular disorders in the adult population. If one look at epidemiologic research, we can see that only a few percent of patients with hypertension actually manage to keep their blood pressure within healthy limits. So that's one reason that we call it the silent killer. Next slide, please. So the goal of this project is to procure R&D services from basically companies in the form of a solution that will provide innovative ICT-enabled monitoring to improve health status and optimize hypertension care. ICT is information communication technology. It is a shared goal among the 5 procuring healthcare organizations, meaning that, and we will show the needs in a few minutes, but the needs need to be addressed fully, but we also consider local adjustments of the solution that we will procure at the end. Some facts. We are in our consortium running the project. We are 10 partners, 5 procurers, basically healthcare regions in Europe, in 4 countries in Europe, and we have 5 supporting organizations in total. The project has started last year in October and will run to February 2023. And during that time, we will procure R&D in several steps, basically going from a description of a solution to a prototype in testing in the real healthcare environment. And the budget for the procurement is roughly 4.6 million euros. So if one look at the healthcare procuring organizations, it is the Ministry of Health in Turkey, the Health Center Zagreb in Croatia, then we have Region Lombardia and Federico II University Hospital from Italy, and Region Jämtland Härjedalen in Sweden. These 5 procuring healthcare organizations actually reach roughly 100 million people, and we estimate that roughly 30 million of those have some problems with the hypertension. If we look on the 5 supporting organizations, we have Empirica from Germany, TIC Biomed from Spain, we have ARIA and Instituto Auxologica Italiano, both from Italy, and Clinic Bolnicki Center Sestre, etc. I do apologize for that, from Croatia. My Croatian it's not that good. So basically we have 10 organizations, 5 procuring organizations and 5 supporting organizations in the consortium. Next slide, please. So if one look at the project, it's linked to a key EU policy priorities. We are addressing a key policy priority of the European Commission's, enabling the digital transformation of healthcare in the digital single market. So basically in this map we aim for the 3rd point, digital tools for citizens empowerment and for person-centered care. So if one look, the HSMonitor project should empower the patients and healthcare professionals, meaning basically that we take the patient's preferences and choices into account, and that in healthcare organization we call that individualized care. We also allow to agree with the common goals between the healthcare and the patients. So we actually see the patients in this project as equal partners in the care process. So what is PCP, or pre-commercial procurement? Basically, it is an instrument that the European Commission has to find solutions where there is no near-to-market solution yet, and it's an unmet need. It's an instrument of public procurement of R&D services of companies, basically. The good thing is that the public procurers act as demanding customers at the end, so it's actually a co-production between the companies and the healthcare organizations, meaning that we will create a solution that already has a huge amount of customers where we think it's a good platform to procure at the end. It is a tool for innovation, and it's actually a risk-benefit sharing under market conditions. The European Commission is supporting PCP as a tool to stimulate innovation since 2012, so it is a common tool for innovative processes. If one look at the benefits for suppliers, it's creating an opportunity for companies in Europe to gain leadership in new markets, because we are actually creating a solution together with the healthcare and the industry. It is a good way to test innovative ideas under real world conditions, meaning in this procurement process, we actually end up with a prototype at the end that will be tested in 5 healthcare organizations in 4 countries in Europe at the end. One usual question that we get is around the IPR ownership, and that is actually the companies or the company consortium will own the IPR of the solution at the end. It provides a large enough demand to incentives industry to invest in wider commercialization, meaning that actually just the procuring organizations we reaches roughly 100 million citizens, whereas we expect 30 million of them have hypertension. But this is still only 5 healthcare organizations in 4 countries in Europe. So there will be a huge market for a solution at the end of the project, or at least that's what we hope. If one look at the pre-commercial procurement process, it's divided in a couple of steps. There will be 3 procurement steps. We are right now in the phase 0, the open market consultation, and this is one event for that. The next step will be call for tenders, and that will open shortly. We will see the timeline of each steps later on in this presentation. In phase 1, which we call the solution design, the companies or the consortium will show a solution design, and the procuring organization will choose up to, well, at least 5, and as long as the budget will hold different suppliers to describe a solution for a holistic hypertension care. In phase 2, we select at least 3 of these suppliers to go through and to make a prototype development. And in phase 3, we test that prototype in the real healthcare environment. And as I said, the description of budget and timeline will be explained in more detail later on in this presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Göran. Maybe just 2 things to mention. I see that one person had an issue with the audio. Hopefully that's resolved. We answered him, but just in case, this is being recorded, the webinar, so it will be available after the event and you'll be able to go through it. And apart from that, there is also a section in your GoToWebinar called Handouts. You can have a look there because we've uploaded the PDF version of the slides, so you can download them and follow with us or spend a bit more time on some of the slides. So next up, we will talk a bit about the aim and the scope of the expected procurement, and this will be presented by Mikael Lilja.
Thank you. Well, the overarching aim is, of course, to address the, if you go to the next slide, please, the needs and the more, to say, the unmet needs that we have in hypertension treatment in the society. And we'll look at different slices, building blocks of different aspects of hypertension in the following slide. And what is there are solutions for certain of these blocks, but no solution for all blocks in regarding hypertension, and definitely no one that is giving an integrated solution, neither between the blocks nor with the existing systems of the procurers. And if we take the next slide, if we start at 12 o'clock, we have three of the traditional blocks within hypertension treatment, and that is the early detection and, first of all, the prevention of hypertension in the society amongst citizens. This is one important building block for us. And in the treatment and lifestyle intervention is very important, and also to optimize treatment and improve the treatment adherence amongst the patients. And if we then go to 11 o'clock, we have other important blocks that we want to integrate in this solution, and that is the training and education of citizens without hypertension but being interested, or with pre-hypertension, as well as of patients with diagnosed hypertension. And we have the patient professional collaboration and coordination as another building block. And of course, it's very important, the quality that is produced, that it has to be good quality, and we have to be able to monitor it. And for adding on to these building blocks, we have at 4 o'clock the devices, both the devices presented by the care organizations, but also the citizens and the patient's own devices for hypertension or wide scales or whatever it might be. We need an integration also there, and we have next building block is personalized decision support for first of all the caregivers. And to achieve all these seamless integration, we need a lot of work on interoperability, of course. So if you go to the next slide, the HSMonitor solution then needs to empower both citizens without known hypertension, with pre-hypertension, or with undetected hypertension, as well as patients and healthcare personnel. And the empowerment, of course, has to be based on the individual's needs and goals. No one size fits all here. And the second block is to have here, so aim is to identify citizens at risk and provide them with encouragement regarding lifestyle, or advices regarding their blood pressure, which might indicate that they are at risk of having hypertension or already having it. The aim is not to diagnose and treat citizens with undetected hypertension, but to guide them to the assistance from the existing care organizations. And then, of course, we need to have a full integration with the existing systems of the procurers of the EHRs and other existing systems. And the solution also should cover the needs of the citizen, of the patients, throughout the entire journey, from prevention, early detection, towards treatment and home care. And the solution also must enable a transition from citizen to patient, so that information gathered by the citizens themselves before they are identified as hypertensive patients. This information from the patient's own devices and what is gathered, there must be a way to transfer this into the care organizations and to use also that information in guidance for both the patient with hypertension and for the caregivers. And the solution must be able to process the various sources of data from the EHR, from devices, and also from data that might arise in the future from genome or whatever. So it must be an open solution for different sources of data. And then the solutions should provide personalized decision support and personalized training, personalized coaching for the patients, and the decision support for the caregivers, based on best knowledge and guidelines, of course. And out of this, it should enable a shared care planning, looking at the patient and the empowered patient and the caregiver, the doctors and the nurses, as equal partners in this process further on. If you go to the next slide, we of course have been working now in this first half year in this consortium of the HSMonitor with the specifications for the solution that we want to see. We where we have the requirements that will be presented, and we have use cases describing patients, different patient scenarios, and also process models, including links to specific databases. And this is what the HSMonitor procurers provide. And to this, we have supporting partners and advisory boards that have looked at what we are presenting and giving their input. And now we have inviting you, industry and research, in helping us to build what we want to see presented. And we have these OMC events, and we have OMC questionnaires, and you can always email us now and in the future if you have any specific question, and we'll do our best to answer it. We could move on to next slide, please. So this is in short a presentation of a summary of what I've said. We have a continuum from prevention, early diagnosis, to treatment of hypertension, and ending up in home care. We have, as you see, different stages of severity in the disease. And we have the citizen aspect, that is persons without known the hypertension with an interest of the topic or with pre-hypertension. And with them, we were working with awareness, basic information, and on early detection, and support them with information regarding lifestyle. And we have the patient health care services where we have patients with identified hypertension, and there we have an individualized training, shared care planning, personalized coaching, and also an optimization of drug therapy aiming at, as soon as possible, have the patient's blood pressure well treated. And for aiding us, we have data from different sources, patient-generated data with other sources, like we said before, like genomics and so on. And we have all the procurer systems, mostly then the EHRs. And describing this in green, you see we have different use cases that you can read and see what we describe, the description of the actual situation and what we want to see in the future. And now I leave the floor to Marie.
Thank you, Mikael. That was quite a lot of information, so feel free to take the time. We have an open market consultation questionnaire that Miriam will talk about, where you can actually find the draft version of the requirements, the use cases. And again, this is the aspect where we as a project and the healthcare providers, the procurers, are working to specify what they want, the demand side, but it's very important to find out whether what they would like to have is realistic in terms of the timeline of the project, whether we have missed something important, and this is where we turn to you, industry players, research organizations, for feedback and for helping us to improve those specifications that will become part of the call for tender. So the next step is to introduce you a bit more into the PCP phases and the tender process. So Marie, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, you've had a brief overview of these different phases, the 5 different ones. I'd like to repeat again that this is to procure R&D services. The 4 phases that we will deal with in a little more detail. And the last phase, obviously, is the public procurement. That is outside of the project. Okay, is the microphone perfectly settled? That's fine. Okay, thank you. So phase 0, as you've already heard, is the question and answer period, basically, where you will go through the open market consultations in the different procurer sites, and some of you participate in the international OMC. So hopefully you will have a lot of information, and you will continue when the call for tenders takes place starting in August. And then we have the different phases that I will present a little more in detail in the following slides. So phase 1 is relating to concept design, solution architecture, and technical specifications. And we are expecting 5 suppliers to be funded in this phase with a minimum of 3 suppliers. They need to develop a detailed specification of the proposed solution that deals with the technical, economic, and organizational requirements of the suppliers. And we expect an output of a detailed report that describes the solution and a detailed plan for the prototyping and testing the activities that will be happening in phases 2 and 3. The time for this phase, number 1, is 3 months. And the maximum budget for this phase is 693,000 euros. And we will rank these proposed solutions according to a ratio that goes between quality and price. And we are still working on that, but I can say already now that the quality ratio will be on the high side. And the contracts will be awarded until the remaining budget for the phase are insufficient. And the timeline for that is December through February. Then we go to the next slide, which is phase 2. Do we have phase 2 up? Okay, good, thank you. We have development of prototype systems in 2 iterations. And here we have 4 suppliers that we expect to participate, to be funded, and a minimum again of 3. We want to develop the most promising ideas and do it into well-defined prototypes. And the expected output of these prototypes are prototype specification, prototype demonstration, a plan for development of a limited volume of solutions for field testing, and an updated cost and benefit forecast, including a preliminary business plan. And the time set for this is 8 months. And the time monthly is March through October 2021. And the maximum total budget for this phase 2 is €1,386,000. And again, we rank the offers according to a ratio regarding quality and price. And again, we award contracts until we have a remaining budget that is insufficient. We go to phase 3, and that is relating to the development and testing of pilot systems. Here we have 2 suppliers that we are expecting to fund with a minimum of 2. The intention is to implement and assess the prototypes in real-world conditions, and that will happen in the procurer sites. Expected output of this is implementation in the 5 testing sites, overall assessment and success verification, and again, an updated cost and benefit forecast, including a preliminary business plan. The time limit here is a bit longer, it's 16 months, and the budget is larger, it's €2,541,000. And the time is from November 21 through February of 23. Then we go to the last phase, and that's number 4. That's the commercialization, and that is, as I mentioned previously, it's outside of the scope of the HSMonitor project. The choice of the procurer is for each public body that we are representing here to decide whether we want to do a commercial procurement of the solution that has gone the whole way through the tender process. And to be decided after the project outcomes are assessed, obviously. And again, the companies retain the IP rights and they're free to commercialize to any other potential customers apart from the 5 procurers that we have mentioned previously. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Before going to the tendering process, I think you pointed out some important aspects. One of them is that this is a research and development action. So based on our research, we have not found a solution on the market. Also, Göran mentioned that completely covers everything. Because we have these 5 healthcare providers, they have their own systems. We want to have systems that are fully integrated. So alone integration is a big aspect that is not realized yet. So any future solutions that are developed need to be tailored to the healthcare systems of the 5 procurers and need to really meet all of their demands and expectations. And you also saw that PCP is a competitive process, so we start with at least 5 different competing proposals that we take into phase 1. When we move through the phases, we narrow them down, but at least at the end we have at least 2 different solutions. That's the nature of PCP, to avoid lockdown, to have different opportunities. And if you want to be one of these suppliers through the phases, then we'll see now how you can actually participate with the tendering process section here. I will be presenting this, substituting Ozan. Next slide, please. Maybe I can just mention that Ozan here is from the Ministry of Health. So this is one of the 5 procurers, and the Ministry of Health of Turkey is actually also the lead procurer. So they have a bit of a more coordination role among the procurers, and that is why he was supposed to present this part here. Submission of tenders will be done via electronic submission, complemented by sending paper-based versions via post. Everything will be in the tender documents. These are just the kind of the rough framework of how the tender will go. And what we expect from you is to complete the 3 different sections composed of your proposal. These are the administrative section, the technical section, and the financial section. And we will provide templates for all 3 of these. Depending on the timeline, depending on whether we can meet all the deadlines, also vis-a-vis the European Commission that is providing some of the funding for this project, we plan to launch the call in late summer. So we'll see the timeline later on, but in August or September, and try to have the call being open for you to be able to participate for as long as possible, at least 3 months, maybe even 5 months. This is to be confirmed in the final tender documents, and we expect submissions in English language. So the call will be open to all types of operators, regardless of their size, organization structure, regardless if you've participated in these webinars and online consultations. Everyone is eligible to participate, either as a single entity or in a joint tender. So we see in past experience from PCP projects, because of the magnitude of the requirements and specifications, the fact that you need to cover 5 different healthcare providers' needs, languages, pilot solutions, if you go through the different phases and you reach the phase where you can actually pilot the solution physically in the location of each procurer's pilot site, you probably also will be looking at a joint tender where you need different partners to cover these expertise. And the proposal must cover all of the continuous hypertension management solution building blocks that Mika presented. So we're looking at a complete solution, and the scoring of your applications of the tenders will be, of course, based on the full picture, the whole solution. Participation in this event and any other events is not prerequisite for submitting a tender. If we look at the evaluation of the tenders, we'll be looking at exclusion, selection, compliance, and award criteria. So maybe the most interesting, I mean, most of them are standard, the exclusion and selection criteria, but if more interesting is the award criteria, which we are currently actually developing. And as Marie said, we're looking at the different options for quality price ratio. This will be also decided finally with the Commission, but we're looking at putting quality to a higher degree. We see here 70-30, but it might be a bit higher in favor of quality. This is a possible formula that you might know from tenders that we would then apply based on our decision with the quality price ratio. Okay, so how is this? How does this work contractually? If you win the bid after the call for tender, you'll receive a framework agreement covering the 3 phases, phase 1, 2, and 3, from through prototype development and development and pilot testing. So for each phase, you receive a specific contract. And if you pass the phase and go through the next phase, you'll receive a new contract for the second phase, etc. So there's a framework agreement with possible 3 specific contracts for you. And during each phase, obviously, we'll be closely monitoring the progress of your solution. So the first phase, if you remember from Marie, it's about still on paper, further developing your concept. But when it comes to phases 2 and 3, we are also involved as procurers. So there will be meetings between yourselves and the procurers. There will be testing meetings. There will be the piloting phase. So there's a much closer collaboration and a much closer monitoring of the progress is necessary. And this is linked to different outputs and outcomes that we expect in the form of milestones, deliverables, and other results. And based on these results and based on the satisfactory completion of those, you can then proceed to the next phase if you're selected. And if you reach the final phase where you develop a full-blown pilot with real users, you will then receive quite a lot of money. So the budget is increasing from phase to phase. And because we're also looking at a smaller number of participants, obviously, the more you can hang in there, the more attractive it is. And hopefully you're one of the last 2 that will develop a full-blown solution, and potentially beyond the project, the procurers might be interested to acquire this solution in larger volume. This was already mentioned, intellectual property rights. That's the interesting part about this instrument. Typically, not typically, but unfortunately, it's a supply-driven world usually. So a company develops something and wants to sell it to a healthcare provider. This is a bit differently. Healthcare providers join forces and have very specific ideas about what they want. There's, of course, some space for you to fill that in. So the healthcare providers are not specifying everything in too much detail. They're trying to specify outcomes and expected functionalities, but it is then up to the suppliers to present how exactly, technically speaking, maybe even organizationally speaking, how exactly this can be done with different options. That's the beauty of the PCP. You have richness in different types of solutions and approaches. But how you're motivated in PCPs is that you as suppliers can keep the intellectual property rights attached to the results generated during the PCP implementation. And for that, there's a financial compensation to be calculated. This will be part of the financial section with some more information about how this works. But yeah, IPR rights are provided to the suppliers beyond the action. Another interesting relevant information for you is that this is again 5 different healthcare providers, procurers, join forces, and they have budget for the procurement. In our case, we're aiming to centralize the procurement with the lead procurer, so the Ministry of Health of Turkey, to make it a bit more easy administratively. And one of these hopefully easier aspects is the value added tax, the VAT. So the Ministry of Health of Turkey is currently trying to acquire, and we expect that they will acquire an exemption certificate for the entire procurement volume in the project. So that would make VAT not necessary in this case of the procurement. Okay, so please hold on for your questions a few more minutes, because we have just one more presentation by Miriam about next steps.
Yeah, thank you very much, Strahil. I'm just going to address and a little bit wrap up what my colleagues have already explained. So summing up, which are the next steps or the next times that you need to pay attention to. The open market consultation, it is the phase where we are now, and this is going to be running until July 2020. Then the call for tenders will follow. We plan to launch the call for tenders in August 2020. Please keep in mind that with the COVID outbreak, we really try to keep the calendar, but maybe some changes are going to take place. So I would highly recommend you to register in our newsletter or just keep an eye on our social media, so you will be fully updated on any changes that this will suffer. So as I said, the call for tenders, it is expected to be launched in August. As Strahil mentioned, we had the idea to keep it open for 5 months, from 3 to 5 months. Then when the call for tenders it is closed, we will make the selection of the companies that will move into the phase 1, and this will be running from December 2020 to February 2021. The second phase will be open once the companies from phase 1 are selected, and will be running from March 2020 to October 2021. And then the companies selected for the third phase will be operating from November 2021 to February 2023. As I said, this is really tentative calendar, and we really aim to keep really this tight schedule. So, as it has already been mentioned before, we really encourage you to find companies to create a consortia. It is not compulsory. You could really submit a bid on your own, but we consider that there are some aspects, like the languages aspect. We are 5 different procurers from 5 different countries, sorry, 4 different countries, because we have 2 Italian procurers, but also there are really different areas that have to be covered by the solution that we are asking you to develop. So, different kinds of expertise. So please keep an eye on this, and we really think that building a competitive consortium, it is really a key of success in this PCP. In order to do so, we have provided you with a tool that it is named the Market Consultation Questionnaire. You have the link here. The link, it is also on the website. So please have a look to it. We are asking you for some feedback. That is the whole idea of this open market consultation process, to get the information from you, from the industry, just to know if what we are procuring, it is feasible or not, or how can we improve the building blocks that we have already defined. So we would really appreciate if you could go through it, give us your feedback, and the last section ask you for some details in order to facilitate the matchmaking. So we also encourage SMEs to go through the building blocks of the HSMonitor and also create a consortium. And the reason why we think that SMEs are an important actor and important stakeholders in a PCP, it is that SMEs usually develop niche solutions, and they are highly specialized. And if you go through our building blocks and the use cases, we are really asking for really precise and innovative solutions. So that is the other point that we would like you to pay attention to, that we are asking for cutting edge innovations. And as I said, working in niche market, in niche areas, that really provides like this advantage for SMEs. And also in terms of what is in there for me, like for an SME, it is not only to be able to be part of a PCP process, it is not only to be able to work with healthcare organizations like firsthand, and to know exactly which are the needs in the market, what the healthcare organizations are really looking for, but also what has been analyzed from all the PCPs that have already been implemented in the European Union. It is that 24% of the startups that took part in a PCP project secure equity investments, and 18% of those startups concluded partnership with big corporates. So we really think that PCP also provides or gives a lot, or offers a lot of opportunities for SMEs. Okay. So the way that we are supporting you to create this consortium, it is the creation of this matchmaking tool that you can easily find on our website. So if you go through our website, if you see on the matchmaking tag, all the companies that have filled in this open market consultation, all the companies that have filled in the section on that they are saying that they are interested in building a consortia will be published on this section. Actually, what we do is we just publish the name of the company, which are the areas that they are, or which is the kind of partnership that they are looking for, which is the country that where they are based, or also what they could really offer, like some, maybe because they have some other subsidiaries or they have connections, and also which are the areas where they are really looking for some capabilities. So I think, I mean, we really think that this could be really useful for you to build like a really competitive consortia. So for any information that you may want to receive from us, all the questions have to be addressed to this email address, suppliers@hsmonitor-pcp.eu, and all the information on the process, it is going to be published at hsmonitor-pcp.eu. We are now going to open the section for the questions, but I would like you to go through our website, because all the questions are going to be published on our website, and they are going to be, let's say, consolidated by all different procurers. So please go through the FAQ section on our website and send us any questions that you may have. And now I will leave the floor to any questions. As Strahil mentioned, you could use two means. On the one hand, raise your hand on the open market consultation facility, or just send us a question through the chat.
Do we have any questions?
I see one raised hand. Malene Schmidt, you've been unmuted. Hello. Can you introduce yourself and ask your question? Malene, can you hear us? You've been unmuted. In the meantime, feel free to use the chat or raise a hand if you have any questions, anything unclear, any tips. We received one question a while back asking about the TRL levels, the technology readiness levels suggested at the end of the third phase. So I had a look at these levels, and I would say that TRL level 6 and 7 are mostly in line with the expectations of a PCP, because TRL 6 is the technology is demonstrated in a relevant environment, and 7 is the system prototype demonstration is done in operational environment. So in phase 3, we're looking at the solutions, services, whatever hardware you need. If we call it a solution as a whole, the solutions are being tested in real pilot sites at the location, at 5 different locations of the healthcare providers. So we're looking at technology readiness level of 7 as a, but of course, if possible to even raise it to 8, which is a system is complete and qualified, that would be of course also preferable. We're looking to have solutions that are almost ready already for market uptake and can be used in real conditions. Okay.
If I may, Strahil, I would also say that they have to pay attention to the period of time where the development it is going to take place, because sometimes it is difficult just to say if it is this TRL 7 or 6, but just consider that you have to deliver some results like in a period of time. So keep that in mind. It's like when defining which is your TRL level.
Yeah, so if Malene cannot speak, I suggest she uses the chat function, but I see another raised hand by Daniele Baranzini. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Dr. Daniele Baranzini from Italy, Ergonomica.
Hello.
Just a short introduction. I'm a company based in Milano for artificial intelligence and healthcare solutions. And my question, two simple questions. One, is there any limitations of having partners that I might be introduced into the group, for instance, Canada? And
Okay.
the second part of the question is, this technology readiness level 6, 7, 8, maybe 8 or 7, let's say, should be tested through 5 different environments, or let's say multi-center trials. Is this favorable? Is it better to favor a kind of coordinated analysis through the, let's say, the experimental design, testing the systems, or these systems could be tested independently through the 5 areas?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll start, and then I'll pass on to maybe the colleagues from Sweden to let us know about their current plans for a pilot site later on in the project. But of course, I think we say that we encourage consortia building. So it's great that you're looking for partners to cover all of the aspects. I think that partners from Canada are also eligible, but you have to be careful about certain requirements imposed by the PCP instrument itself. One of those requirements, and this will be in the call for tender documents, but one of those requirements is that at least 50% of the R&D activities need to be performed within the European Union. So as long as you can, I would say you can include a Canadian partner as long as their share is not that big. Yeah. And then in terms of piloting, we mentioned that in phases 2 and 3, there's a much closer cooperation and collaboration between the suppliers and the procurers, because the procurers provide access to patients. They provide access to several patients in phase 2 to test the prototype testing. So preferably a prototype testing session would be where the suppliers go physically to the healthcare provider. They have invited several patients, healthcare professionals, and the solution is being tested in a room. So the procurers are responsible for ensuring access to such testing users. And same for phase 3, we expect that the solution will be tested by about 50 patients per solution. So these 50 patients, the recruitment of these 50 patients is the responsibility of the procurers, but of course the suppliers are welcome to help in the process. So when we talk about consent forms and things like that, very often we need to check with the actual developers of the system. And you're also welcome to recruit further patients. We've had this case in a previous PCP where the supplier is obviously interested to provide good results, and they are involving their own pool of patients and users in the development phase, in the testing phase. But yeah, this is kind of the distribution of responsibilities. Procurers will provide the user access to the users and will recruit them, but they're very much help from your side is very much appreciated.
Thank you.
We can also add that.
Yes.
Yes. We can also add that phase 2 and 3 will, of course, occur in each of the 5 procurer sites. We also had a question at the international Open Market Consultation, where companies ask if there is if one can add partners after phase 1. And could you, Strahilo or Miriam, explain a little bit further if that is possible or not?
Yes, if you cannot change the constitution of a of a consortium once this has been announced and described in the call for tender documents. As far as I remember, you can plan during the call for a subcontractor that is not named and later on name this subcontractor, but in terms of a composition of partners in a joint bid, you should identify those clearly, as well as their roles, their budget, the plan of their work already in the call for tenders. So it's a big preparation, obviously. That's why we're starting early on. We haven't yet launched the call, but we need to inform potential suppliers. We need to help build those consortia. There are several questions in the pipeline, but let's try to prioritize the raised hands. Again, I'll try with Malene if she has, if she can talk. Hello. Seems not to be working. So one question from Anna Biondi. For integration with procurers, EHR software and other systems, will there be specifications? Yes, we know that this is an important aspect. So we are already collecting from our procurers available information. This can be some basic information about their existing systems, owner of the systems, maintenance of the systems, if available, access to API specifications, etc. So this will be part of the call for tender documents. We'll provide as much as possible information about the existing systems. I don't know if the Swedish colleagues maybe would like to say something about the EHR system and owner they are working with.
Yes, I can do that. In the region of Jämtland Härjedalen, we use the system provided by Cambio, Cosmic. And Cosmic has an open API called Cambio Open Services. So there is a way to integrate solutions into our EHR.
Again, this is a very important aspect. We've seen in past PCPs, exactly part of this consortia building is to seek to build partnerships with those EHR vendors that offer solutions to our procurers. So it is maybe a good idea to have a closer look at the different EHR systems and who is behind them during your preparation. Because the call for tender needs to actually take everything into account. The call for tender should describe your plan, budget, and activities, not just for phase 1, but you need to describe everything as if you will reach phase 3, the end of phase 3. So a full proposal. Okay, we have a question here by Jose Sanchez. How is expected that the co-creation process with the different health organizations will be conducted? For example, regular meetings, workshops. I would say this is not expected in phase 1, where phase 1 is very short. I think it's 3 or 4 months. So we're looking at having the suppliers update their proposals based on the review of the call for tenders, based on some initial feedback, but there's not a very interactive role in this phase. It's more interactive in phases 2 and 3, where in your proposals, I guess you should plan for different activities. You should plan for a number of workshops, face-to-face meetings, if possible, next year, where you will discuss exactly these kinds of things. You can suggest a co-creation workshop, but this is again very much dependent on the availability of the procurer. So these kinds of things need to be planned in advance, need to be put into the proposal. The procurers need to be aware, but because you can imagine in phase 2, where we have 3 different suppliers at the same time, there will be many meetings that need to be planned with our procurers, and things can get messy. So good planning in the proposal plus good communication with the procurers. We'll set up a process for this once we move into phases 1 and 2 of regular communication, emails, exchanges, and online meetings and face-to-face meetings where possible.
Strahil, I can add to that. I agree with everything you say, and I just want to point out that Region Jämtland Härjedalen and the project office, we are very flexible in whatever channels the suppliers and the solution that they come up with would propose to us. And also we have a lot of experience at this point from different Horizon projects to interact on an international level with different procurers and suppliers. So we are looking forward to all those contacts in the near future.
So one question by Marlene Schmidt was about the timing and between phases especially. So yes, the timeline is quite strict and I would say, yeah, there's not a lot of room in between phases. Our idea is that, so with the call for tenders, you need to provide a binding offer for phase 1 and indicative offers in terms of budget and activities for phases 2 and 3. Now, moving from phase 1 to 2, if you want to continue your participation, you need to provide an updated proposal. And we'll try to keep the administrative burden as low as possible, but this will be at least an update of your technical section of the proposal with a binding price for the next phase. And this is what the Commission calls call-offs between the different PCP phases. Based on these results, based on the experience in the phase, again, an evaluation will occur at the end of the phase by the procurers, by the procurer teams, to select the next best, offers moving to the next phase. So yes, we are aware of the intense deadlines and timeline, but we think it will make it work. Okay. Any other questions you'd like to pose, either through the chat or if you raise a hand? We're also looking in the meantime if we've missed any question. So we're collecting these questions in a frequently asked questions document that we'll publish soon on the website. This is one piece of information source where you can get more information about potential answers to your questions. Another one is the website itself, the different sections. Another one is the Open Market Consultation questionnaire that we really urge you to fill in now that you've familiarized yourselves with the project, because that is our way of hearing what you think and taking your feedback and experience as developers and as researchers into account in improving our call for tender documents. There are also other events planned. So there is one event that we have not yet scheduled, but there will be an Italian open market consultation, very probably in Italian language. If you've missed, you can also visit the website and look at the recordings of previous webinars. This recording will also be available probably later today. Am I missing any way of contact? So the website, the email, suppliers@hsmonitorpcp.eu for any questions. And yes, we're currently now working on preparing this call for tender documents, preparing the different requirements, describing, making available templates for application. And we see your role now as providing input and maybe starting to form consortia, starting to look for partnerships to cover all the different aspects, languages, interoperability, requirements, to make a compelling bid and be selected.
I would only add extra here that for them to have a little bit of patience with the answer of the questions, because as I said, they have to be consolidated by all the 5 procurers. So it might take not a lot of time, but just a little bit of time. You might not get the answer the day after. That is the point, but you can always insist on the questions that you have submitted.
Yeah. The colleagues from Sweden, anything you'd like to add? Any reflections?
I can add one reflection or one comment or statement. The world is not, well, it's different now.
It's going to be a deep comment.
Compared to when we planned the project. This was supposed to be a physical meeting where we also had a lot of partner interactions to build a consortia. That's why we also allocated quite a lot of time for this. But if we don't have any more questions during this time, we certainly will not continue until 2 o'clock today. But there is still time to ask questions, of course.
Maybe we can wait for another few minutes just in case someone is typing in a question right now that is a bit longer. We'd be happy to hear from you also, just not really questions, but general observations. If you think that this instrument is right for you, if you plan to apply, if you plan to search for consortia, that will be also useful feedback for us. So feel free to share any thoughts, not just questions. Okay, I see.
There is one question.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. My name is Gert from Sweden. I would like to ask for the company who has participated a previous Horizon 2020 funded project, does this company able to participate for this PCP?
Well, I would say as long as you avoid double funding. So if the project is currently running and you're receiving funding to develop a solution that you now want to apply also here, and thinking about the timeline, realistically, this if you're selected in HSMonitor, you'll be starting early next year. If the budget funding provided by HSMonitor and by your other source are overlapping, then I would say that that would not be possible or not advisable because it will be double funding. If not, I don't see why you shouldn't use outcomes from past research, funded or not funded externally, to evolve it now further in HSMonitor.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, one more question I see in the chat. Does the preparation of further phases, I think you referred to it as the kickoff period, will it be set at the end of an existing phase in the time between phases? I'm not sure I understand fully the question, but so there are fixed phases, and those are after the call for tender, there is a phase 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1 we talked about is the short one, where you're kicking off basically your activities. So you've been approved for funding in Phase 1, and you can now make your plans in the proposal, your offer a reality. So you're kicking off activities, and this is the phase where there's not, I would say, that much interaction. That doesn't mean there's no interaction at all. You can talk to the procurers, but in terms of access to users, patients, professionals, that's not the right phase. So it is a short one where you're updating your proposal, making improvements, and then in phases 2 and 3, you have a much more interactive phase. I hope that answers the question. There's no time between phases as such. So shortly before the phase ends, let's say 1 month before the phase ends, you need to submit your offer for the next phase. And this is evaluated basically by the procurer teams, online or offline, face-to-face, in the last weeks, so that you're given enough notice to whether you're continuing in the next phase or not.
Yeah, so just to clarify extra here, let's say that the last month of each phase, it is more on reporting and evaluation in order to move to the next phase. So there is no time in between phases, but the last month of each of the phases refers more, or it is focused on reporting and evaluation in order to move to the other phase.
And you're not starting from scratch. So we mentioned that you can take your technical section and with track changes update it. That would be also easier for the procurers to see the differences. But we're not asking for completely new offers. We're asking about updated offers informed through your experience, through the phases, through the procurers' feedback. Yeah, okay. If there are no other questions, I then would leave to the Swedish hosts, our colleagues, to close.
So I would like to thank everyone who attended this open market consultation, and also thank you for all the good questions that we had. And again, I would like to stress that if you have any further questions, please look at our website for contact information. You will find everything there. So thank you everyone for joining us today.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would just like to add that an encouragement from all of us to you out there who have listened, and to be really creative in your thinking, be innovative, and be on target when it comes to sharing your thoughts and ideas with other partners, possible partners in a consortium. We look forward to working with you. Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes the webinar. I hope it has been informative, and feel free to get in touch with us if you have any further questions, comments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.